right. Who are we talking to next?
I'm curious what Xander has to say about free will. Let's bring this back around.
Another free will. Okay, let's talk to Xander.
Xander, welcome to the show. Can you hear us?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, sorry if you're tired of talking about free will, but
no.
Sorry, but
go for it.
Yeah, because this topic comes up a lot, and I hear people discussing it, and I'm kind of always thinking, I'm not sure what the difference, or if there is a meaningful difference between the illusion of free will that people talk about, like, oh, we don't actually have free will, we just have an illusion of free will. If there's a meaningful difference between the illusion of free will and actual free will.
Interesting. I like where you're going. And I think this is where Eric and I usually diverge, because I'm much more of a pragmatist. So I would, in general, be a lot more on your side in terms of, hey, if we all are convinced this is a thing and there's no real falsifiable way to determine whether or not it is, then how is that different from it actually being true? And on one level, I agree with you. But I do think there's a practical, fundamentally important difference there. And that is the way we have structured society and the way we have made concepts like morality, like retribution, like our entire legal system is based on free will. And this idea that people who do something that is not within the scope of, appropriate social action are choosing to do that and should be punished for it in order to convince them not to do it again. And that makes sense if free will is true. But if it's an illusion, then that's a problem, because we are all of a sudden, yeah.
Sorry, I just feel I get where you're going, but I feel like it doesn't actually make a difference in that instance, because if we're all just, say, organic computers that do nothing but just compute inputs and produce an output, then the negative outcomes of doing that criminal act of, I might go to jail or I might get fined or whatever, that becomes an input to the calculation that then may change the outcome. So I don't think that if we all said, we don't have free will, then I don't think that would change our legal system, because we would still have to encourage good behavior and discourage bad behavior.
Interesting. So I guess
there are tons of ways that we could be doing our legal system better now, but yeah.
Right. That's an interesting counter. I think that depends on your version of free will versus maybe the one I assumed when you called in. How do you define free will? Because usually the conversation falls into, can you decide to do things or can you not decide to do things, to simplify it beyond any usefulness, really. How do you define free will in this case?
Yeah. Well, I guess when I hear, or if I give a quick example of the whole chocolate and vanilla thing. Mm-hmm. If you offer me chocolate and vanilla, and for a moment it's like, I don't know which I'm going to choose in that circumstance. Mm-hmm. And there's no one else can determine what I'm going to choose. Mm-hmm. And then I'm put in that situation, and I eventually choose one. Mm-hmm. I feel like, that unless there was a way to definitively say this is what's going to be chosen, and we know that completely 100%, then I'm not sure what other. I guess that's part of the reason I'm part of the conversation, because I don't see how that isn't free will.
Got it.
So
if it's, shall we say, the only way I feel like we don't have free will is in a purely deterministic universe, and even without human beings being around, even without consciousness existing, I still don't think we're living in a deterministic universe.
So
interesting.
As someone who mostly agrees with you, Xander, I kind of want to visit something that you said just now, because I think that I think we could sharpen up a piece of what you just said. So you were saying if we don't have 100% definitive knowledge of what's going to happen next, it sounds like that's leaving room for free will. Am I not understanding that correctly? Because that's kind of what I got from that.
I mean, I think that's a good summation.
Okay, so let me try this. Do you think that we could get the knowledge, in theory, that if we were to understand everything about anatomy, everything about neurology and physiology, and we were to isolate all of the different pieces around what is going to influence your decision, do you think that we could predict what the decision would be, or do you think it would still be not determinable?
So I would say that I think fundamentally it's not deterministic. So
so determinable and deterministic are a little bit different. One is just this example. Could we determine whether you were going to choose chocolate or vanilla? Deterministic, it has, at least in my understanding of it, a lot more to do with, the physics of the universe impacting things such that our lives are just dominoes that have been tipping over since the beginning of the universe. So before we get to deterministic, let's look at determinable, because I think that I can make a really good argument for things being determinable. I think that the only difference between us being, the only difference right now is a lack of knowledge. But I imagine that we can get to a place eventually where sufficient understanding and sufficient knowledge could bridge that gap. If we are just meat robots, and Xander, do you think that we're meat robots? Because I do. I don't, V, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, in general.
Okay, so if we're meat robots, then we're kind of left to the fact that we are just responding to the stimuli. We just don't have the knowledge of exactly what is influencing those responses. But if we did have that knowledge, would that view of free will just kind of go up in smoke?
If you were able to, create a copy of my brain, my consciousness, mm-hmm. say in a computer, mm-hmm. and have it be a perfect imitation and run it on fast forward to see what I'm going to decide. If that's possible, then I guess then there is that's a problem for free will.
Well, and I think that we're needing to differentiate between specific kinds of free will. So you're specifically talking about a personal free will, right? Or are you talking about a societal free will or something like the last caller? Maybe we're just not on the same page with free will.
Well, I think there actually is a larger conversation to be had here, which is, Xander, I agree with you that right now, with the information that we have, there is no real meaningful difference between actually having free will and believing that we have free will, because we have, as a society across the world, mostly, decided that free will is a thing on some level. And so if everybody is going to agree with that, then it kind of doesn't matter if it's true or not, because that's just kind of the environment that we live in. It's kind of like, capitalism, right? We've agreed that capitalism is a thing, whether or not it is somehow idealistically existent or true. It's a concept that we have collectively decided is how we run things for right now. But my point here is that there's a difference between saying we cannot know whether or not we have free will, therefore we should just believe we have free will, and we can't know whether or not we have free will, so what next, right? And so I think the big concern that I have is right now, the free will question feels very much to me like the God question. There is not sufficient evidence to have me say 100% God does not exist, there is no God, never has been, ever. And there's not enough evidence for me to say there is a God, right? And so I'm in this space where I'm not making a decision. And to structure a society with one or the other being the absolute truth, regardless of whether or not it's falsifiable, is where skepticism might have a problem. Now, the fundamental day to day of being undecided about whether or not I have free will is a puzzle I haven't figured out yet. How do I function in that universe? But theoretically, the response to your question would be, I agree, there is no difference right now because it's unfalsifiable, but that doesn't mean that we should then wholeheartedly buy into one option or the other.
I kind of want to push back, but I want Xander to get the opportunity to respond.
Xander, what are your thoughts?
Well, when you're talking about, I don't know if we should structure society as if there's one option or the other, I'm kind of in the boat of there's no difference between one option or the other. Right. Like, how would it be possible to structure society differently if we all agreed that there wasn't free will? I think we would be structuring society in pretty much the exact same way.
I think there would be mostly the same. Mostly it would be similar.
I think that's why it comes back to the question. I'm always curious about this, the question whenever the topic comes up, because I don't see how there is any, I don't see any difference really at all between the illusion of free will and free will. Because I guess you could say in general, I would argue that a perfect illusion of a thing, such that it is indistinguishable from the real thing, is the real thing.
Right.
It's no longer an illusion.
And philosophically, I think that that's a fascinating route to go down. But I think that there is a fundamental difference there. Mostly we would be the same. We would still ask, do you want chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream, right? Well, that would still be a question whether or not we believed that free will was accurate in this way that we perceive it. But if you chose chocolate and chocolate was the wrong answer, how we perceive free will would impact how we responded to that choice, right? And so instead of saying, how dare you choose chocolate? You have been exiled, get out. It would now be, okay, well, you chose chocolate. What made you choose chocolate? Can we adjust or can we accommodate? Or how does this work now that you have chosen this thing? As opposed to, how dare you, here is retribution for that choice. So I think there would be fundamental differences in society, not to the point where it would crumble everything, but to the point where it would probably allow us to be a little bit more empathetic.
I feel like we're having three conversations right now.
Oh, absolutely. We're all over the place.
Yeah, I'm trying. I've been wanting to try and cut into to kind of line this out a little bit better. We're having the conversation of is, what ought, and how we came to it. We are bouncing between ontology, axiology, and epistemology, and using them to justify each other in really not great ways. And I'm really, really having trouble with it. It's caused me to get really frustrated. So I think the first, Xander, you're not making an ontological claim. You're not making a claim about whether or not free will exists. You're talking about whether or not we all buy into the story. No matter what the story is, it's not about whether or not it's true. It's about whether or not buying into it would change things, right?
Sort of. I would, clarify. I guess I just I'm trying to figure out a different way to say it. But like for instance, Sam Harris says, "Oh, we don't have free will. We just have an illusion of free will." And I would kind of push back against him and say, there is no difference between the illusion of free will and free will. And so that means we have free will in that way. Or if you want to say, oh, no, we don't have free will, and then we just have the illusion of free will, then it kind of comes more down to semantics.
Well, I think that the ought is going to come in here now, because we're looking at this problem and now we're deciding how we should treat it. And I think that we ought to, anytime we come across an unfalsifiable claim, put it on the I don't know shelf. And if saying it's indistinguishable is putting it on the I don't know shelf for you, totally got you. But if it is an unfalsifiable claim and you're making a positive statement off of something that's unfalsifiable, you're opening yourself up to a line of thinking that can be really damaging in other places in your life. It's not damaging here, but I'm trying to point out a tool that might be a little warped. Xander?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll think on that. I'm not
Yeah, it's just, if you're appealing to something that's not falsifiable and you're taking away a positive assertion from it, that should set off a red flag. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but I'm saying that the reasoning that you're giving could be sharpened up.
Or maybe sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, because Xander, the way that you phrased it in your response to this thing that Sam Harris said kind of clarified things, I think, a little bit for me and where you're coming from. Are you saying that we do not have a choice but to have the illusion of free will, like it's an inevitability?
If you're saying that we only...
Like when Sam...
Sure about.
Yeah, when Sam Harris says we don't have free will, we have the illusion of free will, is the interpretation there for you, we don't have free will, but we have this inherent illusion that cannot be changed of free will? And you're saying those two are the same thing? Because that I would agree with you. I think I am implicitly thinking that the illusion can be broken, and therefore we should, axiologically, change the way that we view it. But if you're saying that the belief is that we have an illusion and we don't have a choice but to have that illusion, then I agree with you.
Yeah, okay. So I like that better. So that way of saying things better. Yeah, I don't think it's about a belief in whether or not we have free will. It's just about the appearance.
Got
and
it.
I don't think it's possible for the world to present itself to us in such a way that we obviously don't have free will.
Got it. Okay.
So in that way, the illusion can't be broken. At least that's what I would think.
Got it. Okay, that actually is a much more concise claim that I think we could actually dive into if we had the time. But unfortunately, we're going to need to move on. But Xander, this was actually a really interesting conversation. We did go all over the place. We kind of talked about all the possibilities all at once, which is probably why it was a little confusing. So apologies there. But I would love to dive into that specific claim a little bit more. If you would like to call back in another episode where we can talk about, is it possible for us to break that illusion or not? Because I think it is. But that's a conversation for another time. Thank you for calling in.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Sorry, I'm sitting there and
you've been emoting.
Yeah, well, I was wanting to bring up a thing. I was wanting to say, okay, it sounds like we're moving a little bit, but I won't.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm curious what the comment section under this is going to be like, because I want to know, because it feels like the free will question strikes at the same chord as like the soul question or the God question in people, myself included, where it's such a fundamental belief that has the same level of proof, quote unquote, as things like the soul or God, that is really uncomfortable when it's challenged. And I don't know, I like poking at those things.
I do too. When I start expanding out those free will conversations to include not ontological statements like how should society be and what would society do if this was the case, completely disregards whether or not it's true, because you're now talking about the way society would interact with it, and whether or not it was true is just the thought experiment at that point. But when it crosses that space, that's when I get confused and I wind up just shutting down, because I'm like, I no longer, if we're talking about whether or not this is true or whether or not it would be a better world if society acted this way, and I kind of, they're just entirely different conversations.
Because to me, it feels like you use that reasoning when we talk about things like qualia, because you're like, whether or not it's true, I don't think we should have that conversation because it opens us up to this ought.
Yes, absolutely. And I try and prevent that in this too. I'm being consistent, right?
No,
I'm being inconsistent.
Yes, you are. But we can discuss that on the live.
This argument.
Yeah.